This is your 17th episode of the Mendez Movie Report Podcast for the week of August 18th, 2026. I'm your host, film critic and namesake Louis A. Mendez. And on this episode, I will be making comments on a weekend of new movies that brought dinosaurs back to the box office. As Black Bear releases a film that was originally thought to be a contender for last year's Oscars as well. Disney uses D23 to announce, quite frankly, the same old shit. NYFF Spotlight Films lineup has been revealed, and TIFF has been making some last minute additions right on time after they did their scheduled day. David Ellison of Paramount threatening California as the DGA and IATSE apparently want to make a deal with Paramount. Barbie 2 is in trouble of getting shelved, and I'll be making comments on why I'm actually rooting for that. And more clarity on the Children of Blood and Bone drama. And finally, Hayden Panettiere's shocking passing. I'll be covering all that this week for this episode of the podcast. A lot of news happened this past week for film, a lot more than I was anticipating. So let's just go ahead and get started on it. All right, so this past weekend in new movies, we had yet another busy weekend for smaller movies as the catch up by studios looking to avoid the behemoths that proved to be The Odyssey and Spider Man Brand New Day. That continued. Now, the biggest film of the past weekend was easily Warner Brothers' The End of Oak Street, one of those dinosaurs run amok movie. This movie has been in pre-production hell for a couple years. I believe it was filmed like way back in 2021, and there's been an issue for years of trying to figure out when to make this happen. Um, and it's finally found its way to the public. I believe originally was supposed to come out last year, then they got pushed to this year, then got pushed back again. And look, and to my surprise, quite frankly, because it did seem like the movie had bad vibes and juju with the marketing and the post production hell, but it received good reviews from critics. But in a situation just like Disclosure Day from earlier in the year, audiences ended up more mixed in comparison with the genre film. So among critics, the film got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 70 on Metacritic. Audiences, 78% on the popcorn meter, 3.1 on Letterboxd, 6.7 on IMDb, and a measly B cinema score, which would be good if this were a horror film. And to be fair, it is sort of a bit of like a horror film. Um, but that is not good for a family entertainment movie, even if a PG-13 one. Um, the film did end up on the lower end of expectations box office wise, making a little under 50 million globally. The movie did cost 85 million to make. You could probably tack on another 100 million in potentially in marketing. So maybe I don't know if this movie's going to get back off its costs on its theatrical run. Um, and quite frankly, I do not think the legs for this one are going to be great, given that the mixed word of mouth from moviegoers. Now, you could go on my Substack, mendezmoviereport.com, and read my B plus review of the movie. It is a soft B plus. I'm not quite as in love with this as other people that I've seen that have been giving it what are tantamount to borderline A tier reviews. I've seen people declaring that this is going to end up being one of their favorite films of the year. But that's critics. Then you look at audiences, and audiences are a little bit more mixed to positive. I think one of the big reasons for this, quite frankly, is that this movie does make certain decisions that can feel like a cop out at the end of the film. It also has a lot of horror vibes that, horror can be a very subjective genre. Unless it's a big hit with audiences, like say an Obsession was earlier this year. And I think that's a big reason why audiences have ended up kind of mixed on it. It is a movie that I wouldn't be surprised if it does kind of find a bit of a cult following as time goes on. Meanwhile, the big counter programmer of the weekend was another kind of dinosaur movie, the animated Paw Patrol Dino movie, which made almost as much as the end of Oak Street did domestically and received about the same mixed response from critics and audiences. That lean more positive than not, similar to its two predecessors. Among critics, the film got 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 47 on Metacritic. Audiences at 95% on the popcorn meter, 2.9 on Letterboxd, 6.2 on IMDb, and an A cinema score. So kind of all over the place between both critics and audiences. In other words, the movie got a pretty decent reception from more populist-minded critics and normie general audiences, but was less well received, among higher brow critics and more hardcore cinephiles. I originally leaned C plus on this movie, but have since bumped my grade up to B minus. Look, it's an inoffensive film for kids. They'll enjoy it, but then forget it with time. I don't think these Paw Patrol movies are going to be that well known, quite frankly. Um, it is what it is. I will say I went and saw this, and because I made a decision last Friday to just aggressively. No, excuse me. I saw this on Thursday as a runner, a double feature with and the Folk Street, so kind of a Dino double feature. And I decided to get this one over with before Oak Street. And I will say that um I kind of sat because I was all by myself. There's a movie that people take their kids to. I made a decision not like be in the way and look awkward, and I went all the way to the back to watch the movie. And it was bizarre. It was like me sitting there. It was like late afternoon watching this freaking Paw Patrol movie in theaters, and I think by staying in the back, the more I've thought about it, since I probably looked only even weirder, but at least it didn't get any unwanted attention. Um, Black Bear released a film that was supposed to be part of last year's Oscars race, but has since become their top awards priority for this season. Barring them grabbing something at the fall festivals. I'm talking about the rivals of Mzai King. The film has been met with good critical reviews, but somewhat more mixed responses from audiences. Though there are generally more positive than not. Among critics, 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, 74 on Metacritic. Among audiences, 76% on the popcorn meter, 3.5 on Letterboxd, and a 7.4 on IMDb. And look, I really, really enjoyed this film. I gave it a solid A minus. Unfortunately, thanks to home life, I can't write a full review like I did the end of Oak Street. But this is gonna be one of my favorite films of the year. Whether it's a top 10 or top 20 favorite films of the years, I don't know yet. Um, I think the reason why this movie is getting some mixed responses from audiences is that it does the movie takes a really un like this unpredictable wild swing halfway through that it almost is like the movie starts at something entirely different than what it ends up being in the second half. And Matt Neglia, during an interview with the director Andrew Patterson, which I was a great interview, that I would recommend people go check out on the Next Best Picture um, YouTube channel. He kind of compared it to Parasite, and I think that's a fair comparison. Um, because it does have this wild swing from the first half to the second half in what it's supposed to be. But I think whereas Parasite was this massive crowd pleaser, this I feel like people maybe feel like the movie they were enjoying in the first half was stolen from them in the second half. And I think that's why what's led to these sort of mixed audiences responses. And I will say this is not, last year Black Bear's top awards priority was Christie. They got to the point where they were just hoping that they could get that Golden Globe nom for Sydney Sweeney. They could even get that, which was a shocker to me. Um, I don't think this is going to fare too well, quite frankly. However, whereas I didn't really see critics putting Christie on their best of the year list, I do think there's going to be critics like me and others who are going to champion and put this in their best of the year list. I wouldn't be surprised if you even see one or two regional groups that actually nominate this for Best Picture. So, I'm I asked a question to on the next best picture mailbag episode, which you can see go ahead and see now for this week. And because my question was the first one that was asked, um, where I do worry that Black Bear can end up becoming Beaker Street or Vertical or IFC, because I do think that they kind of their sensibilities of what they produce and pick up are the kind of movies that I think generally are supposed to play broad, but they're gonna need to get a better campaign strategy than what they've been doing right now, and they need to market these damn movies. Excuse me. There is no reason why this movie could not have done better box office. Like, the only marketing I saw for this movie was Andrew Patterson did some interviews, and Matthew McConaughey kind of went crazy in doing a lot of media. And the movie didn't do too particularly great at the box office. And it's definitely going to be a movie that's going to be. I do still think that one of these days, Andrew Patterson is going to have a lot of things click for a movie that he does that's gonna get into the awards race. But unfortunately, this movie does look like it's gonna be one of those movies that, if he's able to really develop a major fan base and he continues on the momentum he's in, where he is picking up some fans like me, um, that it's gonna be one of those movies that people try to champion as a little movie that more people should see. But hey, if you're listening and you haven't gone check out Messiah King, I highly recommend you go see a Sean Baker raved about the movie on his Instagram. Neon released a stoner comedy, The Working Girls. Now this bombed hard at the box office, which was expected because I did not see like any marketing for this movie. In fact, I didn't know this movie even existed until like a week ago, and it had actually played in, I believe, played at some festival earlier in the either earlier in the year or late last year. Um, Critics gave it a 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, 59 on Metacritic. Audiences 3.3 on Letterboxd, 5.9 on IMDb. I did catch this one because on Friday, I this is what I meant to say earlier. On Friday, I went on this major, like, aggressive binge of all of the really small stuff that came out this past weekend that I could watch, just to make sure, because I really would like to be completely caught up headed into the fall festivals. And this was a movie that I kind of felt very mixed on. It did get a couple chuckles out of me, but I think it's the kind of movie that you're gonna have a certain kind of um taste to get. It was cool to see Kristen Stewart back on screen. It's really wild to see how she's gone from being the Twilight girl into being this like super auteur highbrow cinema indie darling. Um but yeah, it was a C plus from me. It didn't really, I didn't really think much of the movie, but I can see why there are people out there that might find it funny. Um, Now, I did find Nimrod's funny, which is a Green Day adjacent sort of road trip comedy movie. It was okay. I give it a B minus. The film among critics got a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, 55 on Metacritic. Among audiences, 94% on the popcorn meter, 3.6 on Letterboxd, 7.2 on IMDb. So it worked really well with the people who bothered to go see it. Angel Studios released The Brink of War, which is turning out to be a huge box office bomb. And I will say that given the upcoming midterms, I'm shocked that right wing channels didn't market this to their audiences more. It Because it's a film from a right wing coded distributor. Let's say it how it is. Angel Studios is right wing coded, and it's about what is objectively the biggest accomplishment of a right wing president, Ronald Reagan. However, the movie, which I thought was an okay but unremarkable watch, I give it a B minus. I watched this movie during my aggressive binge on Friday of the smaller stuff that we got this weekend. It did gain decent-ish reviews from critics and audiences, but nothing special. Among critics, 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, 51 on Metacritic. A Cinema score, 6.9 on IMDb. It does have a 2.7 on Letterboxd, but I would not be surprised if there's a little bit of review bombing going on there because of the big left wing presses on Letterboxd, which I think is unfair. I don't think this is like this isn't like that Reagan biopic that even I didn't bother to check out. That was probably like just from what I've been told, was just 2 hours of partisan glazing. This is about dramatizing a actual historical event about what is objectively a positive accomplishment by Reagan's administration. And it's got, the stars in it are not right wingers or anything like that. And look, again, it's a completely okay but forgettable movie. I think the way some people feel about Pressure is basically the way I feel about this movie. I logged it as 3 stars on Letterbox. It is what it is. I'll kind of forget that I even watched it unless someone brings it up to me. Um, and finally, Netflix released a straight to streamer film with a new Sandler family adjacent release, a dramedy, a coming of age dramedy. Don't Say Good Luck, starring Adam Sandler's daughter. Well, unfortunately, I don't got her name in front of me. It received positive scores from both critics and audiences. Among critics, at 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, 73 on Metacritic. Audiences, 85% of the popcorn meter, 3.4 on Letterbox, 6.8 on IMDb. And look, I'm gonna say about this movie is that I'm happy that so many people seem to always enjoy these Happy Madison films that Sandler's kids have been starring in, all these dramedies they keep being a part of. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. I have not enjoyed these. Sorry, I have not enjoyed any of these movies. And Don't Say Good Luck, like, I'm hearing from people who thought that it was emotional and they really connected to it, they really liked it. I thought it was kind of boring and I was checked out. This was actually my least favorite movie of all the new movies this past weekend. I caught it on Friday morning. I tried to get it out of the way real quick. I had a bad feeling because of my past feelings about any movies, these Happy Madison dramedies starring the Sandler girls. It just wasn't for me. I didn't connect with it like everybody else did. But yeah, that was your new weekend in movies. Again, another busy weekend, a lot of catch up from of smaller stuff. But and the Folk Street, Dinosaurs were back stalking the box office, and the Folk Street Paw Patrol Dino movie were in the lead for among new movies. And of course, and we finally have Rivals of Inside King out, and you'll have to listen. You have to wait till next week to hear my thoughts on where I think that movie's awards campaign is now that it's finally out and we've gotten enough information on how it's playing. Now, what about the next weekend for a movie? Well, next weekend will be yet another quiet August box office weekend, with the biggest release being Sony's Insidious Out of the Further, yet another addition to the long-running horror franchise. It keeps getting panned by critics, but moviegoers keep showing up for it, so we keep getting sequels and prequels. Um, I'll be watching this. I may even do a marathon in preparation, just to kind of see how these movies play. I mean, I've seen all of these movies and I don't like any of them from what I remember. So we'll see how it plays. But I've never done a binge of them, and I'm thinking, you know what, I might just do that this week to see how they play like that. Um, I will not be writing a full written review for the Substack for this because A, home life, and B, I do want to focus on getting my final Best Picture projections for right before the fall film festivals. Um, we do also have upcoming this next weekend a new Jason Statham dad movie, action movie, Mutiny. Basically, Statham does this Statham thing on a ship this time. And I'm anticipating it's going to play like his other movies, okay but forgettable. The kind of movie that my dad would watch on a Sunday afternoon on FX or TNT when football isn't on, and he and anybody else who sees it probably forgets it. maybe it will surprise me and actually be a movie I'd be willing to give any something higher than a B minus to. Neon will be releasing a new horror thriller, It Ends, which seems to be about a group of friends who find themselves driving to a mysterious apocalyptic circumstance. The film will expand more nationally after next weekend, so look to see if your area is lucky enough that you will get the movie this upcoming weekend, if you're going to have to wait 2 weeks. And finally, I wanted to point out that Vertical is releasing a spring British hit in the States, to the States, I should say, with The Magic Fairway Tree, a kids' fantasy movie based on an old children's books that has an impressive ensemble, including Andrew Garfield, Claire Foy, Rebecca Ferguson, of all people, among others. I've already watched this, even though basically all hardcore cinephiles over in Europe have probably already caught up to this. Somebody showed a picture that this thing is already on Blu-ray over in the UK, and it's not just now coming to us here in the States. But Vertical was kind enough to send me a screener for it. And look, it's an okay, inoffensive kids movie. It's the kind of movie that if I took my kid to, it wouldn't be an experience I'd cherish. It might, I don't know how much I'll remember about this movie by the end of the year, but it wouldn't have been a bad experience either. It does have amazing production design and costumes that, if they don't get into my personal ballot, they came pretty freaking close. Um, but yeah, if anyone's like looking for something new to take their kids to, they are not interested or they already saw Paw Patrol. If this is playing nearby, it would not hurt for you to check it out. But as you heard for yourself, it is going to be a very quiet weekend coming up for movies. And quite frankly, it's only going to get quieter as we get closer and closer to the industry just focusing on those film festivals. It's basically the calm before the storm, before we tend to start getting just hammered with a bunch of awards contenders. The biggest news of the past week, though, for many, was easily the announcements coming out of Disney's D23 convention. They hold one of these every other year over in the Los Angeles area, and it was one of those years to host one. As expected, Disney announced a good chunk of the new X-Men cast for the reboot, which will release in May 2028, and basically kick off the new phase of the MCU in a post-Doomsday and Secret Wars world. Um, Now, obviously, the big name is Indy Navarrete coming off the Obsession, hot and potential Oscar buzz for her. She was cast as Rogue, or which was a bit of a surprise to me. Christopher Abbott was cast as Professor X, which I don't know how I feel about that, but Abbott is a good actor, and the superhero genre is filled with movies that have aged. With questionable castings that have aged well. But yeah, they clearly have big. There have been rumors that they have big plans to turn the X Men into the big sort of like unifying force of the upcoming phases of the MCU. Look, good luck to them. I don't know if the cast that we've gotten so far has really like wowed me and excited me, but I'm completely down for them to prove me wrong. I would love for this movie to be great. And for me to again, I want to be excited about the MCU again, but it's not going to happen overnight. Um, they also announced more information on sequel plans for The Incredibles 3, which I am. The first Incredibles is one of the best films of its year. The second Incredibles is not bad, but it is so derivative of the first movie that I really, really hope that this actually gives us an original story. Uh, Apparently, they did announce that it's going to be more focused on the kids. I just hope it's not the kids get hired by someone who turns out to be actually a bad guy. Um, Coco 2, I do not know how I feel about this. Coco is such a great film, easily one of the best films of 2017, one of the best animated films of the 21st century. I'm very, very, very concerned about how this is going to play. I hope they don't butcher uh, you know, the vibe that I get around the first one by coming out with an unnecessary sequel. I mean, they for every unnecessary sequel we get from Pixar, they do seem to be banger after banger with Toy Story sequels. Frozen 3, yeah, this is coming out next year, and I'm not excited one bit. I found Frozen to be mid. I found Frozen 2 to be mediocre. It wows me that that thing blew up to become what it was because I did not like that. And it's funny because I actually rewatched Frozen. I actually rewatched Frozen 1 and 2 a couple of years ago, thinking maybe now that the sort of annoying cult around it has kind of faded, maybe I'll if I watch it, I'll get it more and I'll like it more. And nope, it I still have the same issues with it. So we're gonna get a Frozen 3. I don't know why, because I know it's because the last two movies made money, but I feel like Moana kind of overtook Frozen among the 2010s. As I just feel like that movie aged better than Frozen did with kids who grew up with the animated films of the 2010s. They also did review Zootopia 3 again. I like Zootopia. I actually thought Zootopia 2 was better than the first Zootopia, but I didn't love it either. The Zootopia movies are good. I'm not going to complain that, I'm not going to debate anyone that they're not good, but they are very derivative of each other. What are we going to do? Apparently, this is about the introduction of birds. So, what are we going to do? The same old story? Bring a bird. Birds are misunderstood. There's a conspiracy. There's a twist villain. I really hope they could do something different than what we got from from part two, which again, I did vibe a little better with part two than I did part one, but at the end of the day, it's just a repurposed part one. Um, they also talked about this year's animated film Hex, next year's Gato from Pixar, upcoming animated titles like Clay from Disney, Ghost Market from Pixar. That I like to see. I like to see some original stuff from them there. They also did a teaser for Star Wars Starfighter, which I am low key kind of excited to check this movie out because even though I was among the defenders of Mandalorian and Grogu, I actually enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Even though I think a big part of it was that I hadn't watched the show, which is why I might be biased for that movie. I do, I do I am sick of all the nostalgia bait. And so I want to see something original. And I think this could be something original and fun for the Star Wars franchise. Um, live action wise, also, the Lilo and Stitch 2 is coming. Apparently, it is basically the they're, I think they said they're taking an episode from the television series and trying to make it into a full blown movie. So this is going to be a live action Lilo and Stitch too. Like, I was not a fan of the first Lilo and Stitch. The original Lilo and Stitch I like, but I also consider to be, and this is going to make some people mad when they hear this, one of the most overrated of the Disney animated films. So I'm really, really not looking forward to this. But this is what happens when the first Lilo and Stitch live action film made $1 billion. Tangled, we are getting a live action version of. And I will say, from what we were shown, those costumes that they had on did not look lived in. They looked like they were Disneyland character actors. So I hope that that look that they gave us wasn't like a good like representation of what the movie is gonna look like. They also announced the third Princess Diaries movie, which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because the first Princess Diaries is a really good movie. It might even be one of my favorite movies of that year, but I'd have to rewatch it. The second one, I was not a big fan of the direction that they took the character in. Um, so I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this third one. And also they're gonna do a sequel to the Simpsons movie. I am not a big Simpsons guy. I'm more of a South Park guy. I thought the first Simpsons movie was just okay. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm excited for this. I'm For those of you who are still excited for this, I have a feeling a lot of them are just boomers. I'm happy for you. Look, I have some positive outlooks on these some of these announcements. They did talk about some original animated movies that they got coming out. But this is the problem that's happened with D23 now. It feels like it's nothing but the same old shit. Sequels, prequels, spin-offs, remakes. We're just gonna keep feeding you. I don't want to say slop because it would be hypocritical of me to act like, because it's not like I like these movies that they've been announcing and doing over the years. All of them I've hated. Like I was not a fan of the Moana live action movie, but I did. Toy Story 5 is going to end up being one of my favorite movies of this year. I liked I really liked Thunderbolts. I really liked Fantastic Four. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and act like everything is going to suck. Some of the stuff that I just talked about that I'm a little concerned about, I'm willing to bet that at least one of them will end up being one of my favorite things of their year. But it's just there's something depressing about how it's nothing but sequel, 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 sequel. And I grew up during the Renaissance era, and that was to me is the standard. That is the measuring stick of great animated films. Um, They also I forgot to mention this, and I didn't even write it in my digest for the week. They also did premiere a new teaser for Avengers Doomsday, and all I have to say is I am astounded at how many people have watched these very mediocre teasers that show us nothing but aura farming, and they've decided that it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. They're so pumped. By the way, some of these people, like my brother, have even seen an MCU movie in years, and they're acting all excited about this. Like, I really do hope that the movie overperforms by expectations. But I have to say, what I have seen so far does not give me confidence that this is going to be a great Avengers film. If anything, it's so far making me think that it might just end up being my least favorite of all the Avengers films. The NYFF Spotlight lineup was revealed, hoping to round out all of the NYFF titles you can expect to see if you're attending the festival later this year. As always, Next Best Picture provided great coverage of the lineup. I'm definitely going to be linking that in the show notes if you want to look over the movies, what each movie is about, the director, and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna give you a very bare bones rundown. The NIF Spotlight, of course, includes Godzilla Minus Zero. That's gonna be the Spotlight Gala. Bucking Faster, which is gonna be the first Werner Herzog narrative feature in quite some time. There's gonna be apparently a movie about a real life story about these uh, teenage girls that talked at the same time. Club Kid, which I am keeping an eye on as a potential dark horse to get into Best Picture. I heard this was a big hit at Cannes. It's gonna be at TIFF. I'm keeping an eye on this one. The debut, which is supposedly gonna be A24's top priority. The question is, will remain that depending on how it's received at the festivals. Edward Said, Between Worlds, Fjord. They didn't get into the main stage, but they're getting the spotlight. I still have questions about how this prickly film is going to play broadly, and if Neon can somehow get into Best Picture. Supposedly, it's still going to be Neon's top priority to get into Best Picture. I have a feeling that that might change in favor of All of a Sudden, but look, it's going to be on the spotlight. We'll see. Let's see how it plays with the New York crowd. Iron Boy. This is an animated film, and it's interesting that they went ahead and had it here, programmed it here for NIF, because traditionally, if you're not an anime film, and this is not an anime film, even though it does look like it's about in 2D. It's not 3D. But if you're not an anime film, you're not going to get in as an animated film. So it's interesting that Iron Boy got in here. Joy of Joys, um, which is a Jonathan Glazer short film. Jonathan Glazer of Zone of Interest. Making Marie Antoinette, which is apparently a documentary on the making of Marie Antoinette. I don't know why it took this long. I guess it has something to do with the oh, okay. So I'm reading it real quick here, but it does have something to do. I guess it delves into Sofia Coppola's relationship with her mom, who, as we know, passed away back in 2024. We also got One More Time, The Only Living Pickpocket in New York, which I've heard good things about. 16 Moments of My Life, um, a statement, which is a new Tom McCarthy film that is definitely going to have to be in the conversation to get into potentially get into Best Picture. A lot of people thought that that was going to be a movie that came out next year, but it looks like it's going to be coming out this year instead. So that's the NIF Spotlight. There are a lot of shorts as well, but I'm not going to go through them. Again, I'm going to link to the next Best Pictures coverage if you want to get more details on in the show notes. I'm going to go ahead and link to that. But we've now rounded out NIF, and I pointed this out on social media. Historically, NIF, you get at least 3 Best Picture nominees that since at least since 2021 that have screened there. So somewhere among the Spotlight and the main slate, there are 3 Best Picture. At least if history continues, there are 3 Best Picture nominees, which I have my theories, but let's talk about that more next week when I unveil my final pre-festival Best Picture projections. We also got the TIFF to announce some last-second additions to the lineup just in time for the scheduling day that happened this past week. So, people, if you are going to Toronto, you are able to start figuring out where on earth you're going to be, how you're going to be trying to see these movies. Now, once again, I did link to Next Best Pictures coverage of the TIFF editions. I'm going to read down. I'm going to read the list real quick. A Good Little Soldier, Walking Faster. There it is again. Closing Night. It's My Time. It Will Happen Tonight. Neil Pearl, No One's Disciple. The Idiots. The Liberation. The Road Not Taken. Trees Are Watching. And the big one, Wild Horse 9. So we now have the entire TIFF lineup completely. Well, I don't know if it's completely complete because technically there could still be some super last second addition, I guess. But basically, we have the TIFF lineup, and historically, at least 2 of the 3 that placed for the audience award, though they did just begin a international award last year that we need to keep an eye on to see how that ages. But historically, 2 of the 3 TIFF audience award placements getting to Best Picture. Um, I think this is going to be very interesting to see how Elsinore plays at TIFF. It's going to be very interesting to see how the debuted and Wild Horse 9 play at TIFF. Um, it's going to be very interesting to see how Club Kid plays at TIFF. So there's going to be a lot of interesting questions. I think Ink is also coming to TIFF, so that would be interesting to check out. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited because TIFF is close to my personal favorite of the festivals as someone who doesn't get to go to the festivals because I do think you get more of a broader view of what movies are getting into what movies could get into Best Picture with TIFF. Last year, this was where Frankenstein began its big comeback after a really rough reception at Venice and Telluride. So it's going to be interesting to see, but it's getting more and more exciting that we finally are getting closer and closer to those festivals and actually hearing from people who have seen these movies with their own eyeballs, so we could finally get some clarity on this race. Um, But hey, like I said, next week I'm gonna lock in my final Best Picture projections before the fall festivals. I'm definitely gonna be keeping an eye, looking back and forth at the NYFF slate, the TIFF slate, what the Telluride slate's probably gonna be, Venice, to try to help me out with trying to figure out where this is probably gonna go for Best Picture. The Paramount and Warner Brothers merger legal battle with the state attorneys and the WGA took another turn this weekend, or this past week, I should say. David Ellison is now threatening to move Paramount out of California if they don't settle and cut themselves off from the lawsuit. To add more wrinkles to this, the DGA and IATSE, the international, basically IATSE is a big artist. And trade industry union group. And they and the DGA put forward that they want some promises from Paramount so they can make a deal to not to back off of opposing the deal. Now, I do think a lot of this has to do with job security because there are concerns that the longer this merger is held up or if this merger is done goes through period that there's going to be some jobs on the line. Disney and 20th Century had their merger and there were jobs loss. There was a cut in films that were being made, which was back to that crazy thing I reported on about Paramount claiming they could get 30 movies a year in for at least the first 3 years. That ain't happening, folks. So the unions, I guess, are trying to get some concessions here, and DGA is backing them on it. And I will point out the heavily favored Democratic candidate for governor, because I mean, heavily is honestly putting it lightly. It's extremely likely that the Dems are going to keep the governor's seat in California this November. He is apparently signaling that he is down with settling with Paramount. I am not a big fan of that, but I've already stated on social media that the California governor's race looked like a did not look particularly uh, appetizing for me to look at from here from Florida. But then again, we're about to make a guy who calls Trump daddy our governor, so I probably shouldn't be talking too much. But he said that he would settle with Paramount. And to add to that, we do have recent breaking news that Paramount is demanding that the state attorneys and WGA pay for whatever money to uh, they have to pay as a result of the forced delay in the merger. I would be baffled if the court actually entertains that bullshit. Like that's ridiculous to me. Oh, go ahead and pay uh our issue. I mean that's Paramount's problem. It should not be the problem of the state attorneys or the WGA. That's ridiculous. But I will tell you what, and apparently Mexico did go ahead and okay the merger. Um I will tell you what, it really does come down to what's going to happen with this situation. Um, are they going to settle, or is WGA going to keep fighting this to the very end? WGA is infamous for being the most prickly and will fight the bosses more than anybody else compared to all the major guilds and union groups of the industry out there. So I'll keep my eye on this. Quite frankly, at this point, I'm getting a little frustrated just with this constant back and forth. But the case doesn't happen till March. So we're just probably gonna have to deal with this stuff for a couple more months. Now, one major subplot of the Paramount and Warner Brothers merger drama is that it appears Barbie 2 is in danger of not happening, uh, as WB head David Salsla is concerned they don't have the money to make the film happen, even with Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach approaching them with an idea they have for a sequel. Uh, this is a very difficult situation for me to parse because on one hand, I think it's nuts that WB is scared to greenlight a sequel to a movie that made over $1 billion. It was a major awards contender. On the other hand, I am among the minority that was not a fan of that Barbie movie, not for the same reasons that people like Ben Shapiro had issues with that movie, but I was not a fan of that movie. And I really don't think there's any need whatsoever for a sequel. So I am in this weird position where I'm kind of rooting for this to end up running the clock out because Barbie 2 will not come to fruition if Mattel takes the rights back, which apparently will happen if they don't. If, from what I understand, if Warner Brothers doesn't trigger some the steps being taken to make Barbie 2 within the next 4 months, I guess Mattel takes those rights back and they wouldn't be able to just make a sequel or any Barbie movie like that without question. Um Look, I'm gonna need you to run that clock out, Dave, because I really, really don't need to see a Barbie 2. But if I were to take my personal bias out of it, it is wild that the Paramount issue is in a position where David Salslav might have to like bite the bullet and not okay what would you would think on paper would be easy money. All right, we finally have some clarity regarding the latest Children of Blood and Bone drama update. I'm gonna tell you right now, this will be the last time I'm going to bother with this story, barring like really massive revelations coming out. I'm kind of honestly getting to the point where I'm kind of sick and tired of covering this. It appears that, but what happens is that it appears that Amanda Sternberg was has to be the lead of this film. In the source material in the book, the main character is supposed to have charcoal black skin. Amanda Sternberg is a light black skinned woman. And there was this big backlash among the fan base about colorism and stuff like that because this is a major problem with people of color, even in the black community and the Latino community when it comes to representation on screen and on stage. There, where you will see a bias towards lighter skin blacks and Latinos than darker skinned blacks and Latinos, and apparently the author told me. Tommy Adeyemi, um, was defending this casting. However, after Amanda Sternberg actually brought up the fact that Adeyemi supports her casting, apparently Adeyemi took this the wrong way, took it as she was being thrown under the bus, and blew up on Sternberg, blocked her on social media. It was super. Apparently, things were super tense on set after that, and now we have the situation post production where where Adeyemi is basically running down the movie, and this is I don't think it's good for marketing that she's out there running down the movie. Look, if this is the truth of of what has gone down and why she's been so vague about it, I gotta be honest with you. I think Adeyemi is out of line on this one. Um, I understand if maybe she started to have some doubts and concerns about the casting, but to blow up on Amanda like this is is strange to me. Like you supported her, she brought up the fact that you support her, so why this crash out? Like the fan base, which it's not like I don't think the fan base is entirely wrong to want better representation like what they got in the book. But you were there supporting this casting, and now you feel like the fan base is going to come after you because Sternberg brought up the fact that you did support the casting. Yeah, this is just a very, very ugly situation. I think it gets more and more bizarre. I do think now the more we've learned that I just struggle to be in Adeyemi's side on this. Again, this would be the last time I bother to cover this, barring major revelations or waiting until the movie actually comes out in January. But If this is really the heart of this, I was expecting some like potentially like controversial scandal type of stuff to come out, but this to me comes off like, quite frankly, if I could say, a little bit of petulant child behavior on the author's part. Very, very weird situation all around. And my recommendation to Paramount and everybody who's dealing with this headache, just kind of put your head down and try to figure out some kind of robotic line that you could keep repeating, because you will get asked about the author when you get out there marketing this film. Um, and to Adeyemi, all I would say is, if this is what has you crashing out, maybe getting your stuff adapted to screen is not for you. And Sunday night saw the shocking news spread that Hayden Panettiere, and apologies if I messed up that last name. I've always personally had a bit of an issue with. I mean, I'm not good with names, period, but I've always really had an issue with her last saying her last name. But Hayden Panettiere passed away at the age of just 36 years old. Early speculation and reporting as I record this from outlets seems to be that a medical event caused by substance abuse may have been the cause, which aligns with her history of battling alcohol and addiction, which she has been very open about, as well as, quite frankly, experiencing a lot of abuse in the business as a child star. That probably contributed some demons. I know she also had a very rough split from her ex-husband, in which she did not gain custody of her child. And apparently was something that was kind of like voluntary by her because of the place she was in her life. Apparently, the last interview she did, there were concerns about her slurred speech. I don't know how much of that is an actual thing to work that I don't know how much of that was a legitimate sign of any substance abuse, but that it was out there, concerns about that maybe she was slurring her speech a little in her last interview. Um, she was a major part of my generation growing up, watching movies and TV, and to me, this loss is a stunner. It kind of shook me a little more than others because she's just a year younger than me. Um, I've been watching her ever since she was, quite frankly, a little girl, because she did the voice of Dot in Bug's Life. I want to say she was in Remember the Titans, which for some people in my generation is like a massive classic. Um, Personally, I've never been that high on that movie, but she's in it. Um, and of course, she then went on to do Heroes, which was this big TV show that blew up during the first season, and then it died this incredible death because after the first season, it became this incredibly incoherent, inconsistent death. I think it got canceled after like 3 seasons. Um, One of the biggest falls in the history of TV. And quite frankly, I'm surprised how many people are still, I see, quoting this on social media today. I didn't know Heroes left that much of a mark on y'all, because all I remember was that show went to crap after one season. But she was on there and she was a major character, and she was considered to be that it had helped her to be a bit of a rising star past just being a child actress. She was also in Scream 4. She came back for Scream 6, a little bit forced, but also not completely unbelievable. Um, Supposedly, she did not come back from Scream 7 because she did support Melissa Barrera the way that she got screwed over. This is a very sad case all around, and it's very shocking, and it's the kind of thing that kind of wakes you up to the fragility of life. But I was really happy that last weekend I didn't have to report on any major death in the industry. And now here I am at the very last second before I record. I have to talk about another major death in the industry, and this one of someone of my generation, of about my same age. We don't have all the details, but it is looking more and more like this is unfortunately a substance abuse issue. I hope it's not self-inflicted on purpose. Um, you with between, you know, we had Kenny Hoido who passed away a couple weeks ago, but that was an unfortunate car accident. Dave Chase passed away. That was because of drug issues. Um, it's really jarring to see these young people pass away. Um, you never know. You never know when it's your time to go. But the best thing that I can say at the moment is that I do think there is a legacy that's going to be left there. Um, Bugs Life, I think it's a great animated movie. Scream 4, I think, and it does seem to be getting a reappraisable. I think Scream 4 is a great movie. I think quite frankly, my hot take is that it's the second best of all the Scream movies. Um, and I just really, really hope that her family has the support that they need right now because I can't imagine what they're going through. Because if I just remember that her younger brother, I believe he died in his 20s because of a heart condition. So that family's been through a lot now. But yeah, it's very, very depressing news that right before I went to bed on Sunday that I had to see come up on my feed. And I we got to do something about failing these child stars. 'Cause she wrote a memoir and she did a whole. I mean, I could have swore she was just on Jay Shetty's podcast. If for those of you who don't know, Jay Shetty, he does a lot of like life stuff and podcasts with famous people and stuff like that. I swear she was on there just a few months ago. It is just wild how now all of a sudden she's no longer with us. But rest in peace. And I think this is where we could go ahead and just close out this episode because this will be the first episode that I don't have anything non-film related to talk about. So we will not be having a what else is on my mind um segment on this episode. Um Next week, the be- m- the best picture projections that I have going into the fall film festivals. That will be the main subject of next week's episode. I cannot wait to talk about that. Um, until then, if you want to read all my work, go to mendezmoviereport.com. You want to find me on all social media, Mendez Movie RPT. And if you want to email me, you can email me at authorlmendez@gmail.com. Until then, God bless and do me a favor. Go watch a great movie for me.